Texas has had a great recruiting run over the past couple months, and the class is already sitting at 22 commits. But there's still some key guys out there as we head into the home stretch. Recruiting expert Justin Wells of Inside Texas stops by to catch us up to speed on all the remaining targets. And you know by now, Inside Texas is your place to stay up to date on everything recruiting for the current class and beyond. Join InsideTexas.com today and receive 50% off your first year. You won't regret it. Offense only has a few guys left, but there's more work to do on the defensive side of the ball. Without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back, Justin. Excited to have you on. And before we talk recruits, how many spots do we have left in the class?
Well, with Cedric Baxter joining the mix, he was number 22 for the 2023 cycle. I'm still thinking it's a 27-28 person class. So you're essentially looking at about 5 spots left, perhaps 6. And then you still have, a couple of announcements that are going to be coming up over the next couple months with Jordan Matthews, cornerback out of Woodlawn down in Baton Rouge. And then Jalen Hill, we reported a couple days ago that he moved his commitment date up to September 21st. And then after those two, you're essentially looking at 3, maybe 4 spots. And so it's crunch time. And I can't remember a class being this full in the middle of August.
I like that because the coaches can really focus on the season opposed to chasing recruits. And as you mentioned, we landed a big commit in Florida, Cedric Baxter. So what's the story there and how were we able to land the top running back?
When Tashard Choice was hired, he was hired to make a recruiting splash. They had a great running back coach in Stan Drayton that went to Temple. And so he had some big shoes to fill. And he's not only filled them, he's surpassed them from a recruiting standpoint. But this is a relationship that Choice, he's hired to make a big splash. Cedric Baxter's the cannonball. This is a kid that he's known for a few years from his recruiting at Georgia Tech. He's got to know a lot of these Florida kids. If you look at a lot of the 2024 running back offers, they're Florida kids. And it's because Choice is close to those guys. I'm going to tell you something. Getting Cedric Baxter out of Orlando, out of the hands of Alabama and Georgia and Miami, who's recruiting really well right now, Florida, which was kind of viewed as like the closest to home type school. It was straight up gangster. Honestly, Homer, Baxter's been in the mix for a while. He just went public yesterday, but this is something that I think has been in the works for at least 2 or 3 months. Tashard Choice, that's the guy in this recruitment, top to bottom. If Choice isn't involved, Cedric Baxter's not coming to Texas. And there's a big sell there, not only from the last year's 2022 offensive line haul, and trust me, that's what Cedric Baxter's looking at. They've also got a pretty strong offensive line haul for 2023, and they've got another running back in this class, a high 4-star in Trey Wisner. And so you're putting those two guys together. If you're going to get the number 1 quarterback in the country, it only makes sense to give him the number 1 running back. And trust me, Baxter and Arch have spoken many times. This is a Tashard Choice win through and through. He owned this recruitment from top to bottom. And I can't wait to see what these guys look like on the field. And with a guy self-motivated like Bijan, with a guy self-motivated like Rashawn and those guys, Jonathan Brooks, who I know he's a big fan of, that's huge. And Cedric Baxter's ready to join that batch.
Choice is paying off early. And wide receiver already has 3 commits, so we're almost done there. But what's the word on major priority Jalen Hill out of Longview? And is Mikhail Harrison Pilot likely headed somewhere else due to numbers?
Jalen Hill, it's funny, Homer. It took 3 wide receiver coaches at Texas to connect with Jalen Hill. They've been recruiting him for almost 3 years. Marion comes along, and they start building a really good relationship. Add to the fact that he's seen what Sark does with the receiver position. He gets those guys in mismatches, and that's something Jalen is very much a fan of. Not to mention, this recruiting class is recruiting Jalen Hill probably as hard as the Texas staff. He's become really close friends with Jonte Cook. They definitely want to play together. He's close with guys like Arch Manning. He's getting to know some of these other recruits as well. He's close with some of the guys that are already on campus, from a Derek Brown and those guys. And so Texas is in a fantastic spot with Jalen Hill, and that's even after his unofficial to Alabama week before last. They just started practice on Monday. I went out there on Tuesday, caught up with him and his dad and some people around the program, and I still feel very confident about Texas. He's looking at September 21st with a commitment date, and I think that's going to be the 4th guy, and I think that's going to be the haul for Texas in 2023, which basically pushes Mikhail Harrison Pilot out. MHP is kind of looking at Cal a little bit harder right now. I know TCU has jumped in the mix, and they're making a pitch. His dad played at Houston, and so I know Houston has a sweet spot in their heart, and that's another school to watch as well. But at the end of the day, with TCU, you got to look at Malcolm Kelly, because I'm hearing that this is a guy that's probably going to take the OU wide receiver job in December. And so you kind of got to look, well, is he going to be there? And Kelly's done a tremendous job recruiting receivers, Homer. I mean, Quentin Johnston, Savion Williams, Jordan Hudson. I mean, these are guys that are going to play on Sundays. And so I think that's going to be a big determinant of what Mikael Harrison Pilot does. But I do think it's going to be one of those three schools, Cal, TCU, or Houston. I think if hell jumps in the mix, Texas is done for this cycle.
Awesome, man. And we're after a potential number buster at tight end in Arizona's 5-star Deuce Robinson. Is that becoming more real? Do you have any intel there?
They have two commitments at tight end, Spencer Shannon, Mater Dei, and then Will Randall down in Isidore Newman. Both of those guys are going to sign. Those are both guys that are going to be in this class. So you have to think, well, would they take a third? If it's Deuce Robinson, you do. Deuce Robinson's a guy that I don't think I have really taken that recruitment seriously until recently. And I probably should, because, USC is thought to be the leader there, and they still may be. But talking to a couple sources, before we got on this video, Deuce Robinson's a really good baseball player. And Texas baseball is actually getting involved in the recruitment along with Texas football. And so I do fully believe he's going to be on campus for an official visit in September. I do think it's actually a USC-Texas battle as we speak right now. I know some other schools are hanging around the rim, but speaking to a source close to him earlier, Texas is right there. And it's a little surprising how close they are, especially, with two tight ends already in the mix. But Deuce doesn't care about that. Deuce cares about the quarterback. He loves Arch Manning and the idea of being able to play with an Arch Manning. And that alone keeps Texas in the mix. If this team wins 9-10 games, Deuce Robinson is going to be a serious recruitment, and it could only add a cherry to the top of this 2023 y'all.
And that's all the guys on offense, but we have more guys over on the defensive side of the ball. D-line needs some more commits as well. Who are the major targets there, and how many spots do we even have left for the interior guys?
I think it's 2 spots if it's the right 2 guys. If a DJ Hicks and a Jordan Hall want to jump in the mix, they're not going to tell them no, nor should they. Those are also 2 recruitments that I think are probably going to go the distance. I think especially with David Hicks Jr., this is a kid that it's going to be Texas A&M, or Oklahoma. I'd even give OU the lean right now because he really likes D-line coach Todd Bates that came over from Clemson. But at the same time, him and his dad will both tell you, I'm open. I fully expect him to take an official visit to Texas. I'm unsure when that might be. This is going to be a recruitment with Hicks where whoever's playing the best, and especially from a team standpoint and a defensive standpoint, between that 3, that's, I think, going to take the lead. And after that, it'll be a battle of recruiting, sales pitches, visits, things of that sort. But I think the number's probably 1. But if you can get a DJ Hicks and you can get a Jordan Hall, you do not turn those guys down. You make room. And so I would say 2 maximum if it's those 2.
And if neither one of those guys work out, are there any other guys we should keep an eye on?
Yeah, Marcus Deal would be the one. He's a guy that I think has a future on the offensive line, but him and his family don't believe that. They like him at defensive tackle. He's a big kid too. He's one that's kind of hard to get a read on. I think TCU's done a good job there. I think OU's kind of still in the mix, but Texas isn't going to let up. They're going to continue to recruit him. And so if something happens with those 2, I could definitely see them still staying on Marcus Deal just to see where that recruitment goes. And it's going to be a numbers crunch too, because if a Hicks or a Hall jumps in, I think that knocks Deal out.
Gotcha. And then looking at edge, we've missed on a couple major targets there recently. What's the word on 5-star Damon Wilson and 4-star Tassili Akana?
Damon Wilson is the unicorn. You get Damon Wilson, you make an impact. That would be a huge get. Unfortunately, I think Ohio State leads that recruitment right now. We were down there. Inside Texas was down at Venice, I believe on Monday or Tuesday, and got to catch up with Damon. He likes Texas. He likes what they're building. It's hard not to. Caught up with Sadir Mitchell earlier, and it's ridiculous how many kids are reaching out to the commitments at Texas to see if there's room, to see if they can get a chance to jump on board. And so I think Damon Wilson kind of is caught up in that in a little bit and understands, hey, he kind of likes what's going on there. The guy you really need to pay attention to is Tassili Akana. He's the 6'3", 210, about 215 edge linebacker out of Sky Ridge. It's in Lehigh, Utah. There's a lot of data points for Akana in Texas right now. Notably, he's been to Austin already, loved his unofficial visit. One of his best friends from high school or from growing up when he was in Hawaii is a guy named Leona Lafau from Kahuku, Hawaii, who just so happens to be a member of the class of 2023 for Texas. I talked to Akana, I believe it was Sunday, and Akana said, yeah, I'm hearing it from Leona every day. He's like, the pressure is increasing every day. Tells me he sets an official visit to Austin for the Texas-Alabama game. I feel like there's going to be a handful of like major guys that want to come in for that game. It's definitely going to be the hot ticket. His sister, she's an All-American volleyball player from BYU, and she's at Texas now. And so he's actually going to be coming in to not only see Texas play football, he's going to come in to watch her play volleyball. When you start adding up all those little data points, it just makes sense that Texas is strongly in the mix. He loves PK and Coach Choate. He loves what this class is doing, like with Damon Wilson. He's watching these guys. He's watching these classes build. A&M is throwing a lot at him. They're trying to get him back on campus. You're seeing a lot of interaction with A&M. OU, I know OU is pushing. I don't know how much harder now because they landed Colton Bosick. And so I don't know how many spaces they're looking at, but I do know they were interested. Tennessee and Nebraska were in the mix for a while. You can't when on the West Coast, Oregon's going to be a factor. Usually USC, if they have a good season, I could see them, turning around a lot of those guys. But Akana's the guy. If I'm a Texas fan and I'm trying to find that final edge, that guy to join a Darian Gillette, who's going to be a linebacker edge, it's Akana. If you watch the tape, Akana's just violent. Akana doesn't have that athleticism, but if you got a guy like him on the edge, you don't always have to have a guy that can just bend. You want a guy that can not get caught in the wash, can shed blocks, can make plays in the backfield. And that's what I love about Akana. This is a football player. You get guys from the West Coast like that with that type of, nationality. Those guys just play hard. They work hard. They just come at you. That's why Utah is so good. Nobody picks Utah to win the Pac-12 when they should, because they recruit those guys and they train them up. Braylon Shelby is a kid that committed to USC. I believe it was last Saturday over Texas. He's a physical freak, man. He's about 6'5", 230, 235 out of Friendswood, Texas. Braylon Shelby, is a really, really good athlete, and he could project to be a pretty good college football player. And despite the fact that he's committed to Southern Cal, they're going to recruit him through the whistle. So those are probably three that I think Texas is in the best position with currently.
It's a good group, and we have 2 commits at linebacker already, and of course we were after Anthony Hill, and fans often ask me, so I figured I'd ask you, is there any potential scenario where Texas could get back into the mix with Anthony Hill post A&M commitment?
There's always potential, and with Anthony Hill, if he was ever going to flip, it would be to Texas, if that was his mindset. It came down to UT and A&M, and he basically, it was A&M because they have a better collection of defensive recruits. They sold him on the fact that the D-line is loaded. It's going to clean up everything on the line of scrimmage and just allow the linebackers to run free and have fun. Texas is not going to stop recruiting Anthony Hill until he signs. That is a fact. There's too good of a relationship there. There's too many ties to Hill and to Texas, from former teammates to friends. Texas is going to be in the mix. That being said, right now, I wouldn't get my hopes up. I think he's an Aggie. I think he's been kind of sold on A&M since probably late spring, early summer. I know he really enjoyed his official visit to Texas, but at the end of the day, Anthony decided it was A&M, and I think right now that nothing's going to change that.
Yeah, I see that decision being final as well, but wishful thinking is fun. And now we arrive at the defensive backs. Corner Jordan Matthews out of Baton Rouge commits on the 15th, and he's been a major target for us. So how are things looking there as we get closer to his announcement?
Yeah, Jordan Matthews, this is a kid that has literally taken 5 or 6 unofficial trips to Austin in the last 2 years, which that may not sound like much, but he's coming from Baton Rouge, okay? That's a long drive. Texas has been the most consistent team in his recruitment for the last year and a half, 2 years. Terry Joseph is making it rain in Dubuque right now. I mean, it's one thing to pull an Arch Manning and a Will Randall, but then when you sneak in there and grab a Derek Williams, I mean, you're cooking with gas. And Jordan Matthews, he's that prototypical corner that everybody wants. He's 6'1", about 180, 185. He's long. He can run. If there was any question about his running ability, he eliminated that with that. I believe it was a 10.600 in the Louisiana State track meet. So he can move. That's going to be, if Texas can get him in the mix, that's a big win because, his family has a lot of football in their group. His father played linebacker at LSU. His brother, I believe, played DB or receiver for Southern. You would just think, well, man, he's going to stay in state. But that wasn't the case. It's about relationships. And they've really gotten close with a Chris Gilbert, with a Coach PK, with a Coach Joseph. I love where Texas is at with Jordan Matthews. I think he knows exactly where he's going. I think he's known that for probably 3 or 4 months now. And the fact that Arch Manning's jumped in, the fact that Derek Williams jumped in, that's only added to help the Texas regime. And so I love where Texas is with Jordan Matthews, and that'll be their second corner take in this class behind Malik Muhammad.
And finally, we have the deeply mysterious Javian Tobiano out of Arlington Martin. And I know you visited with him just a few days ago, so what's the word on his recruitment? And does he project more to corner or safety?
Yeah, I call Javian the international man of mystery, because every cycle you get a handful of recruits that absolutely don't want you to know what they're thinking. They don't want you to know where they're leaning. And sometimes it can be frustrating. But with Javian, it's really cool because he's such a good kid. He's such a phenomenal athlete, phenomenal football player, but he's a phenomenal kid. To me, he's a cover corner. You can say, well, he doesn't run a very fast 40. Go watch him play football. Don't tell me what he runs in a 40. Go watch him play football. This guy has instincts. This guy has incredible change of direction, incredible hips. He's fluid. He's aggressive. And so Tobiano's going to be that one. If they get, they got Malik Muhammad, and let's say they get Jordan Matthews, you add a Tobiano to that, there's not much better you could have done in this cycle. I mean, at that point, Kerry Joseph should just go get his raise right now. There's, I think, 4 schools realistically in this recruitment: Texas, Texas A&M, and then out of state, Oregon and or LSU, Michigan. People want to think LSU's kind of taking a lead because he did go visit Baton Rouge recently. They're actually kind of almost full at defensive back. And so I don't know how much that's going to measure. He loves Michigan. He likes kind of the tradition and how they put out DBs. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he takes an official up there. Oregon is the school he said he's grown up loving. And I'm going to tell you what, when he visits Oregon, and I believe it's going to be one of the first 2 weeks in September, when he goes to visit Oregon, anytime kids visit Oregon, it's different. For recruiting fans, let me key you in on something. Oregon has the most state-of-the-art everything. Now, every one of these schools has nice facilities. They all do. They're big power programs with tons of money. They all have nice facilities. Oregon is different. It's like I had a kid tell me one time, it was like walking into a spaceship. So if this kid goes out of state, and Tobiano wants it to be known, he don't just assume he's going to stay home. He thinks he can play anywhere. And he's right. He can. And Oregon, if I was going to bet, would be the pick out of state. Between Texas and Texas A&M, man, it's probably 50-50 right now. I mean, I've got a couple sources that tell me they think Texas has a slight lead. I had another one tell me they think A&M actually has a better lead. He says nice things about both. He doesn't really tip his hand either way. I'll say this. When Cedric Baxter committed, he posted an Instagram story, and it said the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 running back, one of the top wide receivers, ... number 1 corner, ? Tobiano knows what he's doing. He's having fun, and he's not misleading anybody. He's letting you know, I'm having fun, and I don't want to give away too much. Now, he wants to be committed pretty soon. And he's been telling me that since before summer. And I reminded him of that the other day. He said, yeah, I'd like to be committed, before my senior year. And I'm like, buddy, you're like 2 weeks away. And he said, yeah, I know. I fully expect him to commit to a school within the next month or so. I also expect him to take all 4 of his official visits afterwards. And so that's going to be recruitment that you follow through the whistle through National Signing Day. Texas is going to leave a scholarship waiting for him up until National Signing Day because he's that type of talent. And so that's going to be the recruitment that maybe keeps me up at night, because he's going to be one that he'll tip the scale on a defensive grouping just because of how talented and how good he is. He's a kid that would come in and he will play immediately.
Awesome stuff as always, Justin. And you're always out on the road getting the scoop, so please tell the lovely viewers where they can read your constant recruiting updates.
Yes, please come hang out with us at InsideTexas.com, part of the On3 Sports Network. We've actually got a sale going on right now for a promotion, 50% off of a sub. This is the time to do it. Just because recruiting has never been hotter. Texas is got the number 4 recruiting class in the country going into 2022 season. They got a lot of new weapons on offense. They've got a lot of guys coming back on defense. There's a lot of optimism. There's a good vibe within the program. This is kind of the time to jump in. And so come see us at Inside Texas. We got the best team in the market, one of the best in the country, and I could not be more proud to be a part of it.
And that's a wrap on Justin Wells. Thanks for hanging out. Watch some more of my videos here. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want to support quality Texas content. As always, hook 'em.